This isn't a joke. We're actually doing this. In the early 90s, several console manufacturers started flirting with the prospect of CD-based games. The extra space of a compact disc compared to a cartridge would allow for higher quality music, larger games, and full-motion video sequences. The most prolific of the CD-based systems was the Sega CD, an add-on for the widely popular Sega Genesis. Nintendo themselves had intended to develop their own CD add-on to the upcoming Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and partnered with Sony to do so after Sony had contributed to the development of the SNES by supplying its sound chip. The goal was to make the SNES CD a Super Nintendo add-on that would play games on CDs using a format called the Super Disc, as well as a hybrid console that combined the two technologies made by Sony, called the PlayStation. However, the deal between Sony and Nintendo was viewed as unfavorable by the latter company. Sony would develop and control the Super Disc format, which would give Sony control over all software developed for the SNES CD, and Nintendo didn't like that, as they wanted a stranglehold over all games produced for their systems. So Nintendo President Hiroshi Yamauchi sent Nintendo of America President Minoru Arakawa and Senior Vice President and General Counsel Howard Lincoln to negotiate a more favorable contract with Philips, who co-developed the CD format with Sony and was one of Sony's biggest industry rivals. At CES 1991, just a day after Sony announced the PlayStation, Nintendo announced their partnership with Philips. This was intended to make Sony more lenient with their deal, and the contract did change in Nintendo's favor, but eventually the SNES CD add-on never came to be. But in the contract with Philips, it was intended for them to make a CD add-on for the SNES, something that also eventually fell through. Included in that agreement, though, was a provision that allowed Philips to use some of Nintendo's properties for software on the Philips CDI, a system that played software through the use of a new CD format, the Compact Disc Interactive, which Philips had co-developed with Sony. And so, here we are today. The deal between Philips and Nintendo resulted in the creation of 4 games: Hotel Mario, Link, The Faces of Evil, Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, and Zelda's Adventure. As this is the Zelda Retrospective, we'll be talking about the latter 3. One Source Gaming staffer, Quallen Dram, is a crazy enough person to have a Philips CDI among his giant games collection. I wanted to play the games on original hardware for authenticity, so naturally I wanted to visit him and play it on his system. The big problem with the CDI, however, is that basically all models are on a ticking time bomb. The RAM of the CDI is powered by a small battery that is on the inside of a silicon chip, and once that battery dies, the system is unplayable, and repair is difficult and generally not worth it because it's the fucking CDI. So last year, I raced out and played the games on his system before it was dead forever. The first 2 of the Zelda CDI games were released on the same day in 1993. Link, The Faces of Evil, and Zelda the Wand of Gamelon were developed by Russian-American company Animation Magic, who also developed Hotel Mario. All of their software is notorious for having fully animated sequences that have a ludicrous amount of frames, to the point that they are over-animated and look awful. The cutscenes are so comically bad in their animation, writing, and acting, they've become the subject of ridicule through parody and YouTube poop, something I take great pleasure in.
Worry, Zelda. The Triforce of Wisdom promises the king will safely...
Enough!
Unlike all other videos in this series, for one reason or another, I will not be playing any of these games in full. But I might eventually do so if there is enough interest. Let me know if you want to see full coverage of these games, maybe I'll stream them sometime. We'll be starting with Wand of Gamelon, as it's unique for having you play as Zelda. Every single game on the CDI published by Philips starts with this logo, which has become a point of comedy for me due to its usage in YouTube poop. Aside from repetition and me slowly going insane, I honestly could not tell you why it's so funny. After the title screen and starting a new game, you're smacked right into the opening cutscene, and it's the stuff of legends, as we see its signature over-animation firsthand.
Zelda, Ganon is under attack by the forces of Duke Onklin. I'm going to Gamelon to aid him.
Father, what?
Oh boy!
I love this game already. Wand of Gamelon and its sister title are both played from a side-scrolling perspective, reminiscent of Zelda 2. Only unlike Zelda 2, the game controls terribly. Movement is stiff and unresponsive, and jumping feels like you're underwater, desperately trying to rise, while being weighed down by a brick. The control would be even worse if I was using one of Philips' proprietary controllers. Just look at this thing. But luckily, the controller port on the CDI is compatible with a variety of different controllers, including the Sega Genesis controller. So, I'm gonna use that one. Due to the poor controls, I spent the majority of the game in situations like this one right here, where I could not dodge attacks due to not being able to move out of the way. Enemies with remote attacks like to shoot projectiles that literally home in on your character no matter where on the screen they are. And well, you can't block attacks, you can only strike back and hope that your blow interrupts it. Platforming is especially difficult because of the stiff jump arc that your character has. This game has NPCs. You have to stab them with your sword to talk to them.
Nice jump over the Goma pit! Here, have a drink! Thanks. Hey, there's a fisherman trapped in the fish head! Really?
I really don't understand a lot of these. They're so nonsensical that it honestly adds to the so bad it's good charm that these games have. If Wand of Gamelon didn't play as bad as it does, it might have even been enjoyable. Perhaps the worst part about this game, and the other two, is that they have an almost point-and-click style of progression, where in order to get further in the game, you have to get a specific item from another corner of the map, and you have no idea what you need or where to get it. A walkthrough is essential for progression unless you want to spend hours on end getting lost and dying. You'll need a lantern and a large amount of lantern oil to progress in the game, as a lot of screens, even this early on, are dark and need to be lit. And money to buy these items is a pain to get, as you have to kill enemies, and as previously established, this game is harder than it needs to be because of the controls. Unfortunately, after around an hour and a half with the game, a problem with all disc-based media rears its head.
Hey, I think your disc is dirty. Try ending the game and cleaning your disc.
The game can no longer be read, and almost every animated sequence after this point pops up this message. We attempted to fix it, but no amount of cleaning would work. So it's not the disc, it's the console, which doesn't bode well. This is as convenient an excuse as any to just stop playing. Time for the next game, The Faces of Evil.
Great! I'll grab my stuff!
Faces of Evil plays exactly the same as Wand of Gamelon, so every complaint I already levied at that game, still true here. Stiff movement, horrible controls, nonsensical design, etc. I'm gonna skip several paragraphs of repeating myself. Only, The Faces of Evil is even better than Wand of Gamelon because the main character Link is amazingly overacted to the point of absurdity.
Wow! What are all those heads?
I love this guy. The actor's performance is so delightfully cheesy that honestly, if I heard him in anything else, whoever they played would be my favorite character. I've chosen not to name him because apparently he is rightfully very ashamed of his work on this game, but I want to tell you that if you happen to be watching this video, I wholly, unironically think that what you did here is great, and you should keep up the good work. Some of the NPCs in here are legendary. The shopkeeper's animation and acting is so incredible.
Lamp oil, rope, bombs? You want it? It's yours, my friend, as long as you have enough rubies.
Every single frame of this animation should be in a museum.
Hey, I think your game disc is dirty. Try ending the game and cleaning your disc.
Oh shit, okay. So, this disc is already having trouble being read. It seems like other cutscenes still work after this, so hopefully that was just a fluke. I'm only around 15 minutes into the game, so I'll give it at least an hour before I stop. I sure wish I stopped. The enemy design in Faces of Evil is far worse than in Wand of Gamelon. I spent basically the entire rest of my time with this game attempting to climb this one mountain, getting pelted by the enemies. I eventually adopted a strategy of just jumping through them, which somehow worked more often than not, but honestly at this point, I can't be fucked. This game sucks, and I want out. The last of the 3 CDI Zelda games is Zelda's Adventure, which was released a year later. I'm the most interested in this game because it was not developed by Animation Magic but instead by Viridis. And I don't hear a lot about this game, so I'm genuinely intrigued. Instead of being a side-scroller, it plays more like the traditional Zelda game from a top-down perspective, and instead of being comprised of 2D animation and drawings, it used a combination of live-action video, photographs used for sprites, and CG being used for backgrounds and enemies. It reminds me of games like Darkseid during the renaissance of point-and-click adventure games in the early to mid-90s that use these very same techniques. Honestly, I think it looks really charming, like a relic of its age and the misplaced intentions of its developers, even if it looks really terrible. But this game was ridiculously low budget. One developer going by the name of Jim, who was responsible for keying out the live-action video and animating the CG characters, says that there was almost no budget at all, so they couldn't rent a studio for taking the photographs needed to turn into sprites, or the video needed for the full-motion video. So they came up with a creative solution. They mounted a mirror to the ceiling of their office, and pointed their camera up at it from the floor. For walk cycles, they had actors walk on treadmills, which was sometimes very dangerous and they would fall over. For the live-action full-motion video, they painted one wall of their office blue, and then they had to digitize every single frame of the video to convert it into something usable on the CDI. He got fired from Viridis despite all his work. Yeah. He also says that the game was programmed largely by one person, a man by the name of Randy Casey. So yeah, these are the conditions this game was made under. I'm gonna have to levy something with you. Zelda's Adventure is a rare game, and it's expensive. Colin managed to get Faces of Evil and Wand of Gamelon while they were cheap, but Zelda's Adventure goes for a couple $100 online. So I turned to emulation for this game. But a new problem emerged. CDI emulation is terrible. It figures, given the console is basically just known for its notoriously bad games, that no one would care. But CDI emulation basically stalemated a few years ago. So I booted up the game on MAME and, well, things got interesting. Ironically enough, the game starts with an image saying that it's best played in stereo sound, but the CDI emulation makes it so that the sound is completely screwed. The music and ambience only plays in the left ear, and the voices and sound effects only play in the right ear. How annoying would it be if you could only hear voices in your right ear? Wouldn't that be fucked up or what? Jokes aside, I'll do my best to correct it for this video, now that you've heard what I had to go through, as I can't imagine that this is the intended way this game should be. Zelda's adventure begins with an FMV intro of an old man informing Zelda of the perils of the land. Ganon is taken over and Link has gone missing. Then, after inputting your name and starting your game, you are placed right smack dab in the middle of the map, defenseless, without a weapon, not unlike the first game. In fact, this game is very reminiscent of Zelda 1 and the average Zelda game. You have to collect the 8 celestial signs from 8 dungeons. If you go to the left, a disembodied voice tells you cryptic hints in Limerick.
Go now to the one who has a bed but never sleeps, where by its side the red willow weeps, and to its mouth that never speaks.
Your wand is to the east. It basically acts as your sword, only its attack hitbox is very, weird. It seems like it reaches much farther than it should, but it doesn't cover the entire front of Zelda like you would think it should by looking at its animation arc. There's a little window of opportunity left open for enemies to attack you, and I don't even think that you have invincibility frames, because if you let an enemy get too close, a few moments after it touches you, you're dead. There are NPCs you can talk to at various areas of the map. NPCs give you hints, items, ask you to find them things, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Come close, princess. I'll tell you a great secret. Hear me whisper. Trust no one with hair. Don't even trust me. I've stolen one of your lives.
Zelda's Adventure, though, generally does a much better job giving you an idea of where to go than Faces of Evil and Wand of Gamelon, at least at the beginning, and for that I am thankful. A guy in this tavern here tells you about a stepladder, and after you get it, you can make your way into the first dungeon, the Shrine of Earth, in the mouth that never sleeps next to the red willow that weeps. Entering the dungeon has that disembodied voice talk to you again, and on the next screen, the villain talks to you, giving a very stereotypical villain performance.
Do not come in here. You're not wanted. I am Lord, and this is my shrine, all mine.
I love this game. One thing I should talk about is the sound design on the enemies is a bit ridiculous. The Tektites in this dungeon make this awful screeching noise when you hit them, and they can also grunt like a human. Though I don't know if that was intended behavior, as, again, CDI emulation is terrible, and the sound started to majorly fuck up in this dungeon, with the music cutting out in certain rooms, and the sound sometimes not playing or being majorly desynced. Also, every single mini-boss in this dungeon speaks.
Hey to he, who thee be, you're no friend to us down here.
I can't make this shit up. Unfortunately here, I died, as this enemy is impervious to every attack except for from the ring you get on the screen below. I had expected, like in other Zelda games at the time, to be able to save upon death, so I had not saved at this point. I cannot tell you if Zelda's Adventure lets you save upon dying, because every time I died, the game crashed. So, I have to reboot.
I said this is my cave, mine. This is the Shrine of Rock, and I am Lord. Go away. Take nothing. It's all mine.
I eventually made my way to the end of the dungeon and fought the boss, which you can cheese by standing at the edge of the room and making use of the ridiculous hit detection on the wand attack. In what world does this make sense? Oh well, at At least there's a way to cheese it, because this boss, like all other enemies in the game, kills you incredibly fast by making contact with you. You know what that means? Woo! Going further north, you find a town which is filled with a bunch of quirky and inane NPCs. There's this guy with extreme memory loss.
Hello, Zelda. Welcome to my home. I'm the twins' father, and even I don't know which twin is which. Still, it is good of you to come and visit. My name is Zelda, and you must be the father. No, wait. That can't be true. You just came in. You must be Zelda.
This guy who hates everything.
Hi there. Don't worry about the dog, he won't bite. I wish he did bite, then there'd be a little excitement here in Great Wimbish. Nothing ever happens here. When people do come, they're even more boring. Everybody's dull. I don't want to see you.
And these rude shopkeepers.
Hello, little one. I hope I can be of help to you. Did you see my dog out on Upper Street? How did he smell?
With his nose, of course.
This game is just bizarre. A lot of these characters feel like they were written and voiced in an afternoon, which, given the low budget and rushed nature of the game's development, they might actually have been. I almost want to play the game fully to experience all of the wacky nonsense that it has to offer. Almost. At this point, the guide I had been following, which was written in 2002 and posted on Game FAQs, had ended. So I was running completely blind. But I managed to find my way to another dungeon, the Shrine of Illusion. The entrance of the dungeon has you being dropped into a pit, and then Zelda Zelda slides down, and it seems like this dungeon is circus themed. I mean, between the music and this first room, that's the vibe it's giving me. I would love it if the boss was a fucking clown. The gimmick of the Shrine of Illusion is that it plays tricks on you. Those tricks include things such as some doors being fake, some doors locking behind you, and I think one of the floors is a pit you can walk over. I managed to make my way a few rooms in to an important looking enemy, who, like the mini-bosses from the first dungeon, was impervious to all of my attacks. I died to him a lot.
Yeah, fuck me up, fam!
I tried using every single item in my inventory on this enemy, but none of them did damage. Every single one. You know, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. At this point, the emulator was seriously starting to break down. Every time I entered a new screen, a loud organ noise would play, and combined with the circus music that also restarted every time I transitioned screens, I was starting to lose grip of my sanity. It turns out the real trick of the Shrine of Illusion was making you play this game. I tried looking for another dungeon, but as I had basically lost my mind at this point, and I didn't care if I finished the game or not, after I died, one last time, I decided to just cut my losses and stop before I had gone fully insane. So, those were the Zelda CDI games, an interesting and perplexing part of Nintendo and Zelda history that they don't want you to remember. I've heard some people say that these games are not all that bad, particularly the side-scrollers. And I have to ask, are you fucking kidding? These games rank among some of the worst I've ever played. Between their awful movement and hit detection, the nonsensical worlds and characters, they're just mind-bogglingly terrible. I have great respect for all the people who worked on these games, as it seems they did not do so on the best of conditions, especially the people working for Viridis on Zelda's Adventure, but the end product was not good, and I'm pretty sure they know that. I was willing to give these games a shot, but they were just terrible. Happy April Fools! The April Fools was that I said I'd be playing A Link to the Past next. But I didn't. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I had to delay that video until after this one. Fuck. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and consider sharing it around. If you like what we do, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you can know when we make a new video. Times are rough right now, so I'd especially like to thank all of our Patreon supporters. I hope you have a good day, don't get fooled, and I'll see you all on the next video.